Why did no one see her coming? Maya Chen walked through Riverside Community College like a shadow, head down, books pressed against her chest, long black hair falling across her face like a shield. Most students didn't notice her, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She was 20 years old, a transfer student, new to this place, new to these faces, but carrying the weight of 1,000 old battles on her shoulders. In her previous school, being different meant being a target, being quiet meant being weak. She had learned that lesson the hard way. Bruises hidden under long sleeves, words that cut deeper than any fist. So when her family moved from that small Oregon town, Maya made a choice. She would disappear. Every day followed the same pattern: criminal justice classes, detailed notes in neat handwriting, lunch in the library corner or under that one tree in the courtyard far from the noise, books about law enforcement, criminal psychology. Her dream was to become a police officer, but she never told anyone. Dreams spoken aloud could be used against you. What her classmates didn't know was that Maya Chen was dangerous. Not in the way they might think, not angry or volatile, but trained, disciplined, deadly. Since she was 8 years old, Maya had been studying Kung Fu. Her immigrant parents had enrolled her after she came home with bruises one too many times. Master Liu's traditional school became her sanctuary, a place where silence was strength, where patience was power, where the quiet girl with the downcast eyes became someone else entirely. Over 12 years, she had earned her black belt, competed, won, continued training even after the move. 3 times a week, she drove to the rough part of town where the dojo stood, changed from her invisible student persona into a focused fighter. In that space, she was respected, known, feared even by sparring partners twice her size. But that life stayed separate, completely separate. At Riverside, no one knew, no one suspected. The girl who couldn't meet their eyes could break their bones in 17 different ways. But what good would that knowledge do? It would only make her a spectacle, a curiosity, or worse, a challenge. She kept her head down, attended her classes, absorbed every lesson. Her criminal justice program had a partnership with the local Marine Corps recruitment office. Every semester, active duty Marines visited, spoke about military law enforcement, demonstrated tactical training. Maya always attended these sessions, back row, silent, absorbing every detail, comparing their techniques to what Master Liu had taught her. Military application versus traditional forms, different but connected. Both built on the same foundation. Control yourself before you control any situation. This semester was different, though. Professor Martinez had announced something special: an intensive 2-week workshop, 6 Marines, real defensive tactics training, practical exercises, student volunteers for demonstrations. Maya felt something stir in her chest when she heard the news. Excitement, yes, but also anxiety. This was the kind of opportunity she had been preparing for her entire life. But it also meant exposure, risk, the possibility of being seen. The hallways buzzed with conversation as the workshop approached. Some students were nervous, others excited. A particular group was loud about it. Jake Thompson's crew, former high school football players, self-appointed leaders of the male students. They strutted through campus like they owned it, made comments about female classmates, rated appearances, joked about women in law enforcement. Maya had witnessed their behavior countless times. She never confronted them, never spoke up. Confronting bullies when you're outnumbered and alone only makes things worse. That was another lesson she had learned the hard way. The night before the workshop began, Maya spent extra time at the dojo, worked through her forms with particular intensity, each movement precise, controlled, second nature. Master Liu watched from the corner, his weathered face unreadable. When she finished, he approached. "You are preparing for something," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded. "Tomorrow, Marines are coming to campus, teaching defensive tactics." Master Liu studied her for a long moment. "Remember, Maya, true martial arts is not about proving yourself to others. It is about inner peace, about protecting those who cannot protect themselves, not about showing off." Maya bowed. "Yes, Sifu." But inside she wondered, What if protecting herself meant finally being seen? The next morning, Riverside Community College was electric with energy. 6 Marines in dress uniforms set up equipment in the gymnasium. Their presence commanded respect, attention. Students gathered around them, asked questions, took selfies. Maya watched from a distance, studied them, their posture, their movements, the way they carried themselves with quiet authority. No bravado, no need to prove anything, just confidence born from real capability. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez introduced his team during the opening presentation, outlined the workshop objectives, emphasized that the training would be challenging, that participation in demonstrations would be voluntary. Maya noticed how some students seemed eager to volunteer. Jake's group, naturally. Others looked nervous, uncertain. As the Marines began their first demonstration of basic defensive techniques, Maya found herself leaning forward. Despite her usual tendency to remain in the background, she was drawn in. The techniques were familiar from her training, but the military application was different, more brutal, more direct, less about form and more about function. When Staff Sergeant Rodriguez asked for volunteers to practice with the Marines, Jake's hand shot up immediately. His friends followed. They approached the demonstration area with confidence, joking among themselves, acting like it would be easy. Maya remained seated, but she watched, studied, noticed things others missed. The session revealed a harsh truth. Despite their confidence, most of the volunteers struggled. The Marines were patient instructors, but it became clear that real defensive skills required more than physical strength or athletic ability. Balance, timing, reading an opponent's movements, the subtle details that took years to develop. As the first day concluded, Maya gathered her things quietly, prepared to leave. She overheard Jake's group discussing the session, their earlier confidence replaced with grudging respect. Some admitted the demonstrations looked easier than they actually were. Others wondered aloud whether any of their classmates could actually handle such training. Maya walked to her car in silence, her mind replaying the day's events. She thought about her years of training, her dreams of law enforcement, her ongoing struggle with visibility versus hiding. The workshop represented an opportunity to step forward, but it also meant risking the comfortable anonymity she had worked so hard to maintain. As she drove home, Maya realized something. The next 2 weeks would challenge more than just her physical abilities. They would challenge everything she believed about who she was allowed to be. What happens when silence becomes unbearable? The second day of the Marine workshop brought a shift Maya immediately sensed. As she entered the gymnasium, she noticed Jake Thompson and his group huddled together near the equipment. Their voices carried across the space, whispered conversations punctuated by laughter. Their eyes tracked her movement as she made her way to her usual spot in the back corner. Something had changed, something she couldn't quite name yet. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez began the session by announcing they would focus on situational awareness and quick response techniques. He explained that effective law enforcement required officers to assess threats rapidly, respond appropriately, whether the situation called for de-escalation or physical intervention. Maya leaned forward, genuinely interested in learning how military training differed from her martial arts background. The demonstration began with Corporal Stevens showing how to identify potential threats in a crowd. As he scanned the room, his eyes briefly met Maya's. She quickly looked down at her notebook. Old habits. Then Jake raised his hand. "Sergeant, can I ask something?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez nodded. "Sure, go ahead." Jake stood up, his usual swagger fully present. "I was wondering if any of the students here might have training that could help with these demonstrations. Make them more realistic." The way he said it made Maya's stomach tight. Something was wrong. The sergeant looked interested. "That's a good question. Anyone here have martial arts or combat training?" Silence. Maya felt dozens of eyes sweeping the room. She kept her head down, focused on her notebook, but Jake wasn't done. "Because I heard something interesting," Jake continued, his voice carrying across the gymnasium. "I heard that Maya Chen back there has been training in Kung Fu for years. Black belt apparently, competed in tournaments, the whole deal." Maya's pen stopped moving. Her hand froze on the page. She felt heat rising to her face. Every eye in the room turned toward her. The Marines looked at her with new interest. Her classmates with surprise, some with curiosity, others with something that looked like doubt. How had he found out? Who had told him? The dojo was miles from campus. She had been so careful, so deliberate about keeping those worlds separate. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez walked toward her section of the bleachers. "Is that true, Miss Chen? Do you have martial arts training?" Maya's throat felt tight. She wanted to sink into the floor, disappear, but she couldn't lie, not to a Marine, not to her professor, not in front of everyone. She nodded slightly. "Yes, sir, Kung Fu, since I was 8. The gymnasium erupted in whispered conversations. Jake's grin widened. He had accomplished exactly what he wanted, pulled her into the spotlight, exposed her secret, made her visible against her will. But why? What was his endgame? Staff Sergeant Rodriguez smiled. "Well then, Miss Chen, would you be willing to assist with some demonstrations? It would be valuable for the other students to see techniques applied by someone with formal training." Maya felt trapped. If she said no, she would look weak. Afraid, confirm every stereotype about quiet girls who couldn't handle pressure. But if she said yes, she would be exposed, vulnerable, everything she had worked to avoid. "I don't want to take time away from your instructions, sir," Maya said quietly. The sergeant shook his head. "Nonsense. This is exactly the kind of practical application we want students to see. Please join us." Maya stood slowly. Her legs felt unsteady. She made her way down from the bleachers. The walk to the demonstration area felt endless, every step measured, controlled. She could feel Jake's eyes on her, his friends watching, waiting to see her fail, waiting to laugh. She reached the center of the gymnasium, stood facing Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He was tall, broad-shouldered, probably outweighed her by 80 pounds. "Let's start simple," he said kindly. "I'm going to grab your wrist, show the class how you would respond." He reached for her right wrist, slowly, telegraphing the movement. Maya's training took over. Without thinking, she rotated her wrist against his thumb. The weakest point in any grip broke free smoothly. Applied gentle pressure to redirect his arm away from her body. It was basic, simple, but executed perfectly. The sergeant nodded, impressed. "Good, clean technique. Let's try something more challenging." For the next several minutes they worked through increasingly complex scenarios, attempted grabs, holds, attacks. Each time Maya responded with precise, controlled movements. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just technique honed over 12 years of disciplined practice. The gymnasium had gone completely silent. Students watched with rapt attention. Even Jake's cocky expression had shifted to something else. Surprise, maybe, or uncertainty. But Maya could feel something building. Jake wasn't done with her. This wasn't just about the demonstration. There was something else, some plan she couldn't quite see yet. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called over Corporal Martinez. "Let's show a two-opponent scenario. Miss Chen, you'll be approached by two potential threats. Your goal is to create distance and identify an escape route." Maya positioned herself in the center of the mat. Corporal Martinez and the sergeant began moving toward her from different angles. She tracked both of them with her peripheral vision, maintained awareness of her surroundings. When they closed in, she moved. Quick sidestep, created an angle, redirected one opponent's momentum into the other's path, opened a clear escape route, moved through it without breaking stride. Perfect execution. The Marines exchanged impressed looks. "Outstanding situational awareness," Rodriguez commented. "You've clearly had excellent instruction." Maya allowed herself the smallest hint of satisfaction. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe she could demonstrate her skills and retreat back into comfortable anonymity. Maybe Jake's plan, whatever it was, had backfired. Then Jake spoke up again. "Sergeant, with respect, those scenarios were pretty controlled. What if Miss Chen faced multiple opponents who weren't cooperating? Would her training actually work in a real situation?" The question hung in the air, loaded, challenging. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez frowned slightly. "That's not really the point of these demonstrations, Mr. Thompson. We're teaching technique, not staging fights." But Jake pressed on. "I just think it would be valuable for all of us to see if traditional martial arts actually translates to real defensive situations. No disrespect to Miss Chen, but Kung Fu is more about forms and kata, right? not actual combat. Maya felt anger flare in her chest, hot and unfamiliar. She had spent years swallowing comments like that, enduring doubts, accepting underestimation as the price of invisibility, but something had shifted. She was already exposed, already visible, already standing in the center of the gymnasium with everyone watching. What did she have to lose now? "I understand your concern, Jake," Maya said quietly. Her voice carried across the silent space. "Traditional martial arts can seem impractical, but the principles are the same: control, balance, timing. They work regardless of the situation." Jake's grin returned. He had gotten her to engage, to react. "I mean no offense, but you're pretty small. What if you faced opponents who were bigger, stronger, trained even, like say 6 Marines?" The audacity of the suggestion stunned everyone. Even Jake's friends looked uncomfortable. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez started to intervene. "Mr. Thompson, that's completely inappropriate," but Maya interrupted. "It's okay, Sergeant." She looked directly at Jake for the first time since the demonstration began, met his eyes, saw the calculation there, the trap he had been setting. He wanted to see her fail publicly, spectacularly, wanted to put the quiet girl back in her place. Teach her a lesson about staying invisible. "If the Marines are willing," Maya continued, her voice steady, "I'd like to accept that challenge." The gymnasium exploded in reaction, students talking over each other, some excited, others shocked. The Marines looked at each other, uncertain. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maya, lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Miss Chen, you don't have to prove anything. This is getting out of hand." Maya shook her head. "With respect, Sergeant, I've been proving myself my entire life. Just never where anyone could see it. Maybe it's time that changed." Why do the quiet ones always surprise us? The gymnasium had transformed into something else entirely. No longer a classroom, no longer a controlled demonstration space. It felt like an arena. The energy had shifted, electric, tense, expectant. Students who had been half paying attention were now pressed against the edges of the mat, phones out, recording. This was going to be memorable one way or another. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez called his team together, spoke in low voices. Maya watched them deliberate, saw concern on their faces. They were trained professionals. They understood the liability, the optics of 6 grown men facing a 20-year-old female student, but they also seemed to recognize something else. This had become about more than just a demonstration. Maya stood in the center of the mat, breathing slowly, deeply, the way Master Leu had taught her, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Heart rate steady, mind clear. She wasn't afraid. That surprised her. For years she had feared exactly this kind of attention, this kind of exposure. But now that it was happening, she felt only calm, focused, ready. Jake sat in the front row with his friends, arms crossed, confident. He thought he knew how this would end. The quiet girl humiliated, put in her place, order restored. He had probably been planning this since he found out about her training. Dug around, asked questions, built his trap carefully. But he had made one critical mistake. He had assumed her silence meant weakness. Her invisibility meant inability. Her quiet nature meant she couldn't fight back. The Marines finished their discussion. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached Maya again. "Miss Chen, we've agreed to participate, but under certain conditions. This is still a demonstration, not a real fight. We'll be using controlled techniques. No one gets hurt, and we stop immediately if you or anyone else wants to stop." "Understood," Maya nodded. "Understood, Sergeant." He studied her face for a moment. "You're sure about this?" Maya met his eyes. "I'm sure." The 6 Marines spread out around her, created a circle, not close enough to crowd her but close enough to respond quickly. They wore their physical training uniforms, loose pants, t-shirts, built for movement. Maya was still in her regular clothes, jeans, a simple long-sleeve shirt, sneakers. Not ideal for fighting, but she had trained in worse. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez explained the scenario to the watching students. In law enforcement, officers sometimes face situations where they're outnumbered. The goal isn't to defeat everyone, it's to create opportunities to escape or call for backup. We're going to simulate a scenario where Miss Chen is surrounded. She needs to maintain her defensive position and look for openings. He paused, looked at Maya. "Ready?" Maya dropped into her stance. Weight distributed evenly. hands up but not aggressive. Eyes tracking all 6 Marines at once, using her peripheral vision the way she had trained for years. Ready. The first Marine moved, Corporal Stevens, quick step forward, reaching for her shoulder. Maya rotated, redirected his momentum, used his weight against him, let him stumble past her. Before he could recover, she had pivoted to face the next threat. Sergeant James coming from her left. She dropped low. His grab went over her shoulder. She rose up inside his guard, applied pressure to his elbow joint. Nothing painful, just enough to create separation. The gymnasium was completely silent except for the sound of movement on the mat. Students barely breathed. 2 Marines down, 4 to go, but Maya knew it would get harder. They were testing her now, being careful, but if she held her own, they would increase the pressure. Corporal Martinez and Lieutenant Davis moved together, coordinated, coming from opposite sides. Maya had practiced this scenario 1,000 times. 2 opponents attacking simultaneously. The key was creating an angle. Never staying in the middle, she burst forward, closed the distance with Martinez before Davis could reach her, used Martinez's body as a shield, stepped around him. His own teammate had to pull up short to avoid collision. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez joined the rotation. Now there were 3 Marines actively engaging while the others reset. The tempo increased. Grab attempts came faster from multiple angles. Maya's training took over completely. No thought, just reaction. Muscle memory built over 12 years of repetition. She moved like water, flowing around attacks, never resisting directly, always redirecting, finding the path of least resistance. Master Leiu's voice echoed in her mind. Be like water. Water does not fight the rock, it flows around. Over time, water shapes even the hardest stone. Minutes passed. Maya was breathing harder now. Her shirt clung to her back with sweat, but she hadn't been caught, hadn't been cornered, hadn't frozen or panicked. The Marines were breathing hard too. They had increased their intensity, still controlled but testing her seriously now, looking for weaknesses, gaps in her defense. They weren't finding many. Then Corporal Stevens came in low, shoot for her legs, a takedown attempt. Maya had fraction of a second to react. She sprawled, dropped her hips, posted her hands on his shoulders, drove him down and away, used his momentum to vault over him, came up facing the opposite direction, right into Sergeant James. He had timed it perfectly, anticipated her counter. He wrapped his arms around her in a bear hug from behind, lifted her off the ground. The students gasped. This looked like the end. Maya trapped, helpless against a man twice her size. But Master Leiu had taught her about this too. When you cannot go forward or back, go down. Maya went completely limp, dead weight. Sergeant James hadn't expected it. His grip shifted, loosened for just a moment as he adjusted. That moment was enough. Maya tucked her chin, dropped her center of gravity, slipped down through his arms like silk, hit the mat in a roll, came up 6 feet away, back in her defensive stance. The gymnasium exploded. Students shouting, cheering, some laughing in disbelief. Even Jake's friends were on their feet. Maya allowed herself one quick glance at Jake. His expression had changed completely. No more cocky confident, just shock, maybe even something like respect or fear. The Marines regrouped, all 6 surrounding her again. But this time something was different. They were smiling, not mocking, not condescending, but genuine appreciation. The smile of professionals recognizing skill. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez held up his hand. That's enough. Demonstration complete. But Maya shook her head. With respect, Sergeant, the scenario isn't complete. I haven't escaped yet. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Miss Chen, you've more than proven your point. Maya's voice was steady, calm. The point isn't to prove anything. The point is to complete the training scenario. You said the goal was to create an opportunity to escape. I'd like to finish. The sergeant looked at his team. They nodded. All right then, let's finish this properly. The 6 Marines closed in tighter. This was the final phase, the most dangerous. No more one-on-one exchanges. They would all move together, overwhelm her with numbers, force her to make a mistake. Maya calculated her option, looked for the weakest link in the circle, found it, Lieutenant Davis, slightly smaller than the others, positioned between 2 larger Marines. She burst toward him, full speed. No hesitation. The other Marines reacted, tried to close the gap, but Maya was already moving. She dropped into a slide, went low under Davis's reaching arms, between his legs, like a baseball player sliding into home plate, came up on the other side, outside the circle. She was free. The demonstration was complete. For a long moment nobody moved. The gymnasium stood frozen. Then Staff Sergeant Rodriguez started clapping, slow, deliberate. His team joined in. Then Professor Martinez, then the entire class. The sound built into thunder, students on their feet, applauding, shouting. Some were crying, not tears of sadness, but something else. Relief, maybe, or vindication. The quiet ones in the crowd saw themselves in Maya. Saw what happened when silence finally found its voice. Maya stood there, breathing hard, sweating, disheveled, hair falling in her face, but standing, undefeated, unbowed. She looked at Jake one more time. He wasn't clapping, just sitting there, staring. His plan had backfired spectacularly. He had meant to humiliate her. Instead, he had given her a platform to shine brighter than anyone had imagined possible. What happens after the world finally sees you? The gymnasium slowly emptied, students filing out in clusters, still talking, still processing what they had witnessed. Some approached Maya, quick words of congratulations, respect. Others just nodded as they passed, acknowledgement from people who had never acknowledged her before. The Marines gathered their equipment, packed up the demonstration mats, but Staff Sergeant Rodriguez lingered, waited until most of the students had left. "Miss Chen," he said, approaching her. "That was remarkable, truly. I've seen a lot of fighters in my career. You've got something special, not just skill, but composure, control. You never lost your head even when we pushed you hard." Maya didn't know what to say. Compliments made her uncomfortable. She settled for simple. "Thank you, Sergeant. My Sifu taught me well." Rodriguez nodded. "Your teacher should be proud, but I want to say something else, something important." He paused, chose his words carefully. "In law enforcement, you'll face situations where you're underestimated because of your size, your gender, your quiet demeanor. Today taught me something, taught all of us something. The quiet ones are often the most dangerous. Not dangerous in a bad way, but dangerous because they've been preparing while everyone else has been talking." He handed her a business card. "If you're serious about law enforcement, reach out to me when you're ready to apply. I'd be honored to provide a reference. The agencies need people like you, people with real skill, not just bravado." Maya took the card, looked at it, then at him. "I appreciate that, Sergeant, more than you know." After he left, Maya sat alone on the bleachers. The gymnasium felt different now, bigger, emptier. She thought about what had just happened. She had been exposed. Her carefully constructed walls of invisibility shattered in front of everyone. And instead of the disaster she had always feared, it had become something else. Liberation. Professor Martinez approached from the entrance. "Maya, are you all right? That was quite intense." Maya nodded. "I'm fine, Professor, just processing." Martinez sat down beside her. "You know, I've taught this program for 8 years. I've seen a lot of students come through, some loud and confident, others quiet and uncertain, but I've learned something. The ones who make the best officers aren't always the loudest ones in class. They're the ones who listen, who observe, who prepare in silence and act with precision when the moment demands it." She stood up, put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "What you did today was important, not just for you, but for every student who's ever felt overlooked or underestimated. You showed them that quiet doesn't mean weak, that invisible doesn't mean incapable, that preparation in silence speaks louder than any boast." After Martinez left, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what had happened. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline still coursing through her system. She had faced 6 trained Marines, had held her own, had escaped, had won. But more than that, she had stepped into the light. After years of hiding in shadows, she had finally let herself be seen. And the world hadn't ended. The bullies hadn't won. Instead, something new had begun. Maya drove to the dojo that evening, needed to see Master Leu, needed to tell him what had happened. When she arrived, he was in the middle of teaching a class to younger students. She waited in the observation area, watched him move through forms with those children, patient, precise, teaching them the same lessons he had taught her. When class ended and the students filed out, Master Leu approached her. He took one look at her face and smiled. "Something happened today." It wasn't a question. Maya told him everything. The challenge, the demonstration, the 6 Marines, the escape. Master Leu listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I told you once that true martial arts is not about defeating others. Do you remember? Maya nodded. Yes, Sifu. Today you learned that lesson in a new way. You did not fight those Marines to defeat them. You fought to show others what is possible. You fought to teach, not with words but with action. That is the highest purpose of martial arts, to protect, to teach, to inspire others to protect themselves. He placed his hand on her shoulder, the same way he had done when she was 8 years old, scared, bruised, broken. I am proud of you, Maya, not because you won, but because you chose to step forward when it would have been easier to stay hidden. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. I was terrified, Sifu, the entire time. Master Leu smiled. Good, fear means you understood the risk, but you did not let fear control you. That is courage. Real courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. Maya drove home that night with Master Leu's words echoing in her mind. She thought about the years of hiding, the careful construction of invisibility, the deliberate choice to be overlooked. She had thought she was protecting herself. And maybe she had been, but she had also been imprisoning herself, building walls that kept others out but also kept her trapped inside. When she walked into her apartment, her phone buzzed. Multiple notifications, messages from classmates she barely knew, some congratulating her, others asking questions about her training. One message stood out, from Sarah, a quiet freshman Maya had noticed in some of her classes, another invisible girl. The message was simple. Thank you. I didn't know it was possible to be quiet and strong at the same time. You showed me it is. That means everything. Maya read the message 3 times. She hadn't thought about the impact of her actions beyond her own situation. Hadn't considered that other people might be watching, might be inspired, might see themselves in her story. It was a responsibility she hadn't asked for, but maybe one she needed to accept. She fell asleep that night with conflicting emotions. Pride, anxiety, hope, fear. But underneath it all, something new, something she hadn't felt in years. The sense that maybe, just maybe, being visible wasn't a death sentence. Maybe it was a doorway. The question now was what she would do with this newfound visibility, and whether she could hold onto it when the attention faded and the challenges continued. Can you rebuild yourself after the world has seen you broken? The next morning, Maya arrived at campus with trepidation. She had spent years being invisible. One demonstration couldn't erase that history. She expected everything to return to normal, expected the attention to fade, expected to slip back into comfortable anonymity. She was wrong. A small group of students waited near her usual parking spot, but they weren't there to gawk or demand entertainment. Sarah was there, the quiet freshman who had sent her the message. Marcus was there too. One of Jake's friends, the one who had always looked uncomfortable with the group's behavior. A few other students Maya recognized but had never spoken to. Maya, Sarah said nervously, we just wanted to thank you for what you did yesterday. It meant something to those of us who usually try to stay invisible too. The words hit Maya harder than any of the Marines' attacks had. These people had been watching her for months, seeing themselves in her quiet movement through campus, her careful avoidance of attention, her deliberate invisibility. And yesterday she had shown them something different, a possibility they hadn't considered. Marcus stepped forward. I wanted to apologize for Jake, for all of us really. We've been acting like jerks for a long time, treating people badly, making assumptions. Yesterday opened my eyes to how wrong we've been. Maya didn't know what to say. She had never imagined her actions would create this kind of ripple. You don't have to thank me, I was just defending myself. Sarah shook her head. You were doing more than that. You were showing all of us that quiet doesn't mean powerless, that being invisible is a choice, not a weakness, that we can step forward when we're ready. The group dispersed, went to their classes, but the encounter stayed with Maya all morning. Her criminal justice class felt different. Professor Martinez asked her to share insights about martial arts applications in law enforcement. Maya found herself speaking up in discussions for the first time. Her voice, when she chose to use it, was thoughtful, informed. revealed knowledge and perspectives that had been hidden during months of silence. Other students listened attentively, asked genuine questions, not challenging, not mocking, just curious. Maya discovered something surprising. Speaking up didn't make her a target for harassment. It earned respect, friendship from classmates who appreciated her thoughtful contributions. The Marines continued their workshop for another week. They made a point of consulting with Maya about defensive techniques, invited her to assist with demonstrations. She became an unofficial co-instructor, helping other students understand the principles behind the movements, finding ways to explain complex techniques in simple terms. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez privately told Professor Martinez that Maya's skills and composure suggested she would make an exceptional police officer. He offered to provide references for her future applications, wrote a detailed letter of recommendation, sent it to her email with a note. "You have something special, Chen. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, least of all yourself." But the most dramatic transformation was Jake's. For several days after the demonstration, he avoided eye contact with Maya, remained uncharacteristically quiet during classes. His friends noticed the change. Some drifted away, found new circles. Marcus stayed, tried to pull Jake toward better behavior. Finally, on Friday afternoon, Jake approached Maya as she was leaving the library. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by obvious discomfort, something that looked like genuine remorse. "Maya," he said quietly, "can I talk to you for a minute?" Maya stopped, faced him, her expression neutral but not hostile. Master Leu had taught her that true strength included the ability to show mercy, to allow others the opportunity for redemption. "I owe you an apology," Jake continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Actually, I owe you a lot more than that. The way I treated you, the things I said, there's no excuse for it. I was completely wrong about you, and I was completely wrong about what makes someone strong." Maya listened without interrupting, sensed that Jake needed to find his own words for what he was trying to express. "I thought being loud and pushy made me tough," Jake continued. "I thought putting other people down somehow made me better. But watching you handle those Marines, seeing the kind of real strength and skill you have, it made me realize what a fool I've been. My whole approach to life has been wrong." "Everyone makes mistakes," Maya said simply. "The important thing is learning from them." Jake nodded gratefully. "I've been thinking about what kind of cop I want to be, what kind of person I want to be. I want to be someone who protects people like you were protecting yourself, not someone who makes others feel small." Over the following weeks, Jake worked to rebuild his reputation, apologized to other students he had treated poorly, began approaching his training with genuine humility instead of false bravado. He and Maya never became close friends, but they developed mutual respect, an unspoken understanding that served as an example to other students about growth and change. Maya's influence extended beyond individual relationships to the program's culture as a whole. Students who had previously stayed silent during discussions began speaking up, sharing their own perspectives and experiences. The competitive atmosphere that Jake had fostered was gradually replaced by something different, more collaborative, more supportive, people helping each other grow instead of tearing each other down. Professor Martinez noticed the change immediately, made adjustments to her teaching style, better encouraged participation from all students. She began incorporating discussions about leadership styles, the difference between authority based on intimidation versus authority based on competence and respect. Maya continued to evolve in her new role as a visible member of the college community. She discovered that speaking up and sharing her knowledge didn't make her a target. It earned respect, friendship from classmates who appreciated her thoughtful contributions. When the Marine workshop concluded, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez presented Maya with a certificate of exceptional performance, invited her to consider military service as a path to law enforcement. Maya ultimately chose to pursue civilian police work, but she treasured the recognition from professionals whose opinions she deeply valued. The most meaningful change, however, came in Maya's relationship with herself. Years of hiding her abilities and avoiding conflict had taken a toll on her confidence, her self-expression, her sense of who she was allowed to be in the world. The decision to step forward and demonstrate her skills marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where she no longer felt the need to choose between visibility and safety. Maya began volunteering to help other students with defensive techniques, study groups. Her quiet leadership style proved highly effective. She discovered a talent for teaching and mentoring that she had never explored before. Several younger students sought her advice about dealing with bullying, building confidence, finding their own strength. Master Leu, when Maya told him about the aftermath, smiled with deep satisfaction. "You have learned that true strength is not about defeating others," he told her. "It is about standing up for what is right, protecting those who need protection. Your demonstration was not about fighting, it was about teaching." As the semester progressed, Maya's story became part of Riverside's culture. New students heard about the quiet girl who had stunned everyone with her abilities. But more importantly, they learned about the importance of not judging others based on appearances or assumptions, about the power of preparation in silence, about the strength that lives in quiet places. Maya graduated with honors, was accepted into the police academy with strong recommendations from professors and the Marines who had witnessed her skills. Her academy instructors quickly recognized her potential. She excelled in both academic and physical training, not because she was the loudest or most aggressive, but because she listened, observed, prepared, acted with precision when the moment demanded it. Years later, as Officer Maya Chen walked her beat in the community she had sworn to protect, she often thought about that day in the gymnasium, when she had chosen visibility over invisibility, courage over comfort. The decision had changed not just her own life. It had created ripples of positive change that continued to influence others. She had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could do was simply refuse to remain hidden when others needed to see, needed to understand that strength came in many forms, that the quiet ones often had the most to teach about true courage and resilience. When she passed young people on the street, especially the quiet ones walking with their heads down, she always made eye contact, offered a nod, a small acknowledgement. Sometimes that was all it took, one person seeing another. One person saying without words, "I see you, you matter, you are stronger than you know." Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and in that action it writes a story that echoes far beyond the moment, a story about the power of silence broken at the right time, the strength of preparation meeting opportunity, the courage of stepping into light when darkness feels safer. Maya had learned that being invisible wasn't protection, it was prison, and the key had been in her hands the entire time. All she had to do was choose to use it, choose to be seen. Choose to show the world what quiet strength looked like when it finally decided to stand.